Hello, I'm Stephen Fry. Now and then, a piece of television comes along that moves us as a nation, but it's even more remarkable when something does that, but also reminds us all of the extraordinary power of thinking, of the value of asking difficult questions, and of trying to examine who we are as human beings. Waiting for the Out, the new BBC drama inspired by philosophy teacher Andy West's remarkable book, The Life Inside, is one such rare event. Andy's own story is deeply affecting, coming from a background in which his father, uncle, and brother all ended up in prison. He nonetheless found his own separate path in life and escaped the pain of confinement. In Andy's case, this was achieved through study and eventually through doing philosophy in schools, going on to teach philosophy in prisons as well. Like many of us and many of the people he's gone on to help, that took a few false starts, by the way. Andy is the first to tell you he was hardly a success in his years of formal schooling. What strikes me about this work and everything he does really is that Andy doesn't present philosophy as a kind of route to redemption, either for himself or for the inmates he works with. It isn't a story about easy transformation, which is sometimes reflected very uncomfortably in Dennis Kelly's excellent adaptation of the story. Instead, what both powerfully communicates is something more honest and more profound: the importance of asking difficult questions, of engaging seriously with challenging ideas, and of discovering how that process helps us navigate the world and ourselves. Philosophy, as we see in Waiting for the Out, isn't about providing answers. It's about learning how to think, how to reflect, how to examine, how to live with uncertainty. And where lives have narrowed and choices have been constrained, that ability to think freely, rigorously, and together can be quietly, radically transformative. As some of you may know, I myself spent time in prison as a young man or as a youth, an experience that was deeply uncomfortable and surreal. For me, reading extensively was essential as it kept my mind engaged and helped me maintain my sanity and allowed me to process what was happening, really. I might even go so far as to say that reading saved me. But had I, like the incarcerated fellow citizens had Andy and his colleagues work with me, had I had access to philosophical questioning, to shared reflection and discussion, well, I think it would have been an even greater lifeline, because it would have meant I was not just reading philosophy, but doing it with other prisoners, which really means in the company of others. And that's so important. It's the beating heart of this drama. People, in this case, people in prison, yes, but sitting together to talk about freedom, responsibility, goodness, guilt, hope. Prison can drain you of your humanity and dignity, and philosophical inquiry can help to connect you with both yourself and with others, and with your mind, and to believe in the power of your mind. Philosophy, then, is not here an elite pastime, but a means of survival, a way of understanding one's own story and imagining a different future. Nowhere more than prison does one have the opportunity, indeed the necessity, to reflect on one's life, and to cultivate reasoning skills in a setting that can feel almost devoid of rationality. Gosh, the power inside you discover. Also, nowhere perhaps is that reflection more important, except possibly in schools. And it is there, of course, that Thoughtful and the Philosophy Foundation's teams also work, giving children the chance to reason, reflect, and question more deeply. But wouldn't that be achieved through discussing science or poetry or history? Well, not fully, I think. The kinds of thought experiments and paradoxes we see Dan offer his students in the show are used in philosophy because it's been seen that they are great in opening the mind to complexity and really finding out what one believes, and understanding that it's okay for there not to be an answer even to a very difficult question that seems life and death. There may be no right and wrong answer in an ethical question. And at a time like now, I can't think of a more important tool in society. Yes, the traitors. Fortunately for me, I was a faithful rather than a traitor, so I didn't have to offend too egregiously against Kant's prohibition on lying. Jeremy Bentham would have approved, of course. The deception is justified by the charitable outcome, consequentialism writ large. Still, it's hard not to sympathize with Kant here, and perhaps that's why the show is so compelling. We're natural Kantians, and watching people lie their way through each episode both appalls, amuses, and fascinates us. In terms of the mind, actually, what it taught me, amongst many other things, is that intelligence is not a single stable thing that you can define and consider settled. People accused me of being intelligent, but there are so many kinds of intelligence. There's street intelligence, cunning, smartness. I have none of those. And there are plenty of philosophers with brilliant minds, I think, who would have done even worse than me on traitors, because everybody has a different kind of intelligence. In philosophy is one of the studies that brings the threads of those different sorts of intelligence together, I think. I'm currently playing Lady Bracknell. Actually, I've just finished playing Lady Bracknell in The Importance of Being Earnest, where truth-telling is treated with a similar flexibility as in The Traitors. Algernon and Jack, the two sort of male heroes, are certainly on very sticky ground where Kant is concerned. And I suspect Bentham even might raise an eyebrow at their probity too. But really, these names are placeholders for core truths and ways of seeing the world. You can say Kant, you can say Bentham, or you can do a sort of long way round about this kind of description. Um, it won't give you the power of the secret traitor, of course. I read voraciously as an adolescent and became fascinated by questions of morality, ethics, human nature. The early Platonic dialogues was where I came in. I still have the bug and occasionally go back and read them again. I'm astonished by how they relate to everything in my daily life and how beautifully written they are, how expressive they are of humanity as well as intelligence. Indeed, there isn't really a separation in Socrates' mind, who's the kind of main player in most of the dialogues, between humanity and intelligence, which is interesting when you start to think of AI. Do I think that philosophy is something we should all have access to? Gosh, damn, I do. Absolutely. Philosophy should sit at the heart of learning, leadership, politics, indeed, everything in our society. It's so freeing. It's so empowering, to use a rather annoying word that everybody uses about everything nowadays. I mean, I've had people say, oh, bread is empowering. Anyway, shush. Logic. Think about logic, the sort of starting ground for philosophy. Um, it's indispensable. It allows us to scrutinize and test arguments, rhetoric, ideologies, and the apparent certainties that surround us. It also underpins our understanding of artificial intelligence, drawing on traditions that stretch from Aristotelian propositional logic through first order logic to Bayesian reasoning, which is the kind of trick that AI uses to seem to speak. Without these tools, we risk being dazzled by the systems that we neither fully grasp nor properly question. Ethics, too, has never been more urgent, my goodness, as we confront technologies such as gene editing, stem cell research, AI, autonomous driving. Who's in charge? We are forced to ask not merely what we can do, but what we ought to do. These are not technical questions, they are profoundly moral ones, and they belong to every single member of the human race, not to any elite, either a business billionaire elite or a political elite or an academic elite. They belong to you and me. And then there is epistemology, the study of knowledge itself, which feels essential in an age increasingly defined by fakery, distortion, deliberate deceit. We're living in an epistemic crisis, really, a knowledge crisis. Learning how knowledge is formed, justified, challenged, and sometimes corrupted, and how it can be believed in is so vital if we're to navigate the modern world with any confidence or integrity. None of this, as I repeat, should be reserved for academics or an educational elite. Philosophy belongs to everyone. I am passionately convinced everyone deserves access to these skills and resources, not only to better understand themselves and the world they inhabit, but to contribute to that world thoughtfully, responsibly, and humanely. And there is no need to use any long words. We don't have to say epistemology. We don't have to quote names like Bentham or Kant. We can understand that this is all about what goes on in each individual mind and how our minds work and how we can understand the experience of being alive. Freedom, yes. Well, in typical philosopher fashion, one might begin by asking what we actually mean by freedom. Freedom to, freedom for, freedom far from, freedom from prison bars or from other external constraints. That's one thing, but freedom to think, to explore one's individuality, to act as a fully rational, inquiring agent. That seems to me the freedom that most matters. Have I learned to do that? I have the whole of my life. I've striven to think clearly and question myself honestly and resist the easy seductions of certainty. Have I reached that? Well, it's constant work of progress for us all. I like to say no human being is a noun. We're all verbs. Philosophy, on the other hand, is the anchor for me. It's what keeps me honest. Because without reflection, freedom becomes noise. And without philosophy, we may risk forgetting what freedom is for in the first place. Makes you think, doesn't it?